Okay, let's preview round 16 of the NRL season. Now, tomorrow is State of Origin Game 2 in Perth, and recent years when Origin goes to Perth, New South Wales have a better record than Queensland, so that's going to be quite interesting to see who comes out on top. Obviously, there are some lineup changes. Mitch Moses is out for New South Wales. Luai's coming to replace him, and of course, the big talking point with Queensland is Cherry Evans has been dropped completely from the squad. And Tom Dearden starts in the halves side alongside Cameron Munster and a change in captaincy. So that's really interesting. Queensland very rarely do that. So that's really interesting to see. Talking about round 15 quickly, and I do tend to agree with a lot of the ex-players and media who've commented on this. It wasn't the best quality rugby league that we've seen. I think the weather's had a part to play in it as well. But it wasn't necessarily the best quality games that we've seen in the NRL in recent years in the last round. But we've got more teams playing this week. Only 3 teams have byes. So we've got a lot of games, a lot of things to discuss. The weekend's action starts with the Tigers Raiders, both coming off the bye. And it's an interesting one because these are 2 teams going in 2 different directions. The Tigers, since the Lockie Galvin kind of blow up saga kind of thing, with him not wanting to re-sign there. Now he's actually left the club, and he's obviously gone to the Bulldogs. But since that announcement where he said he wasn't going to re-sign, he wasn't going to stay, their form has dropped off somewhat, which is a bit disappointing because they had a bright start to the season. They've already won more games this season than last season, I think. So they're overall their season's gone better, but since the Lockie Galvin situation reared its ugly head, their form has dropped off. They are coming off the bye, so it's going to be interesting to see how they respond. It'll be interesting to see if Luai backs up after Origin as well. The Raiders, on the other hand, their season's been brilliant. And as a Raiders fan, I'm pleasantly surprised and happily surprised with how the team is doing. Very young team, but they play in a way that is very off the fact. Both these sides play a very similar style, very off the cuff. High energy. They like to spread the ball wide quickly. The forward battle, I think, is going to be where this game is won and lost. The Raiders, though, have only lost a couple of games, and a lot of these young players are really stepping up to first grade. So that's good to see. It's going to be interesting, though, I think, how the first 20 minutes in this game go. I think the forward battle is going to be where the game's won and lost. Ultimately, the Raiders do have a very powerful mobile forward pack. The Tigers, their form has been a bit concerning, but they are at home and therefore anything can happen. And of course, the weather last weekend was atrocious in several games. Very heavy rain, temperatures a lot lower than average as well, so it's kind of like a British winter down in Australia, which is a bit weird. So maybe that might suit the Raiders with the slightly cooler conditions and the potential for weather disruption and rain. I think that might suit the Raiders a little bit. But the Raiders are favourites, but both these teams play very similar styles. They're both young teams. They're very exciting. We could see a lot of points scored as well, which would be good to see. Overall, the Tigers are a better team this season than last season, but there needs to be a change in team fortunes because they are starting to slide the wrong way down the NRL ladder. Then we get to the Warriors-Panthers. Now, again, these are 2 sides at different ends of the NRL ladder. The Warriors have had a brilliant season. They are the real deal. Much like the Raiders, these are 2 sides that are putting down their premiership credentials. The Panthers, look, they've had a very disappointing season by their standards. And it's, again, going to be interesting to see how their Origin players back up after Game 2. And how many of them do play in this game. Their depth has been tested this season. Yes, they have had injuries. They've had players a little bit out of form. So this is going to be an interesting one for the Panthers because their form recently has improved, but it's been inconsistent, although the performances have been better than their lengthy losing streak to start the season following the victory in Vegas. But the Warriors at home, they are... It's not going to be easy for the Panthers. Plus, you have, obviously, the narrative of Ivan Cleary used to coach the Warriors. His younger son is in the Warriors system. So there's a kind of a good link between both clubs here. Some players who play for the Warriors have played for the Panthers and vice versa. So there's, a lot of overlap between the 2 clubs. But for me, the way the Warriors are playing this season, much like the Raiders, I do think they are the favourites in this game. The one issue with the Warriors is their attack isn't as potent as other top teams. So they score less points on average than some of the other teams around them in the top 5, top 6. Their attack is not as lethal as other sides. The Panthers, on the other hand, they need to tighten up defensively. They can score points. We've seen that in some of their recent results. They've conceded less, but their defence has been a weakness this season as well. Yes, there has been a change in personnel. They've had some massive squad turnover in recent seasons. They've had to let a lot of players go because of salary cap. And it's going to be interesting to see, with a lot of their players, a good chunk of their players like Yo and Cleary and others playing for New South Wales, if they do back up or if they use some of that squad depth and just to see how it goes. But the Panthers away in New Zealand, it's going to be a tough one for them. It's going to be a tough one for them. Let's not hide away from that. But I'm looking forward to this game. This is going to be an intriguing matchup. The Panthers can win this game. Their form has improved, the performances have improved, but they're still a long way off the Panthers that we've seen in obviously the last 4 or 5 seasons. The Dolphins Knights is an intriguing one because the Dolphins are just scoring points for fun at the moment and their defence doesn't give up a lot of points. The Knights, however, have got the weakest attack in the NRL, and defensively they can be suspect. They have got injuries. They have got players playing Origin tomorrow. So again, another team that's heavily impacted by the Origin period. And as I say, the Dolphins have been scoring points for fun in the last month. They've put a lot of points on teams, and they just score freely. Their attack is finally clicking. They're getting their combinations to work. Okay, admittedly, they were missing a couple of players because of Origin, going into Origin camp, but that didn't impact them last week. I can't see anything but a Dolphins win with just how both sides are playing. The Knights are too inconsistent. They can play well one week and then be terrible the next. And they did lose their last game, whereas the Dolphins put on a record scoreline against the Cowboys. And we've only got players like Herbie Farnsworth and Jack Bostock on that left side. I mean, that is a lethal edge, and those two are scoring tries for fun. They're playing well. They're playing with confidence, and a lot was expected of the Dolphins this season to finally, kick on, be a top 8 side, and they're starting to show those credentials. Whereas the Knights, massively inconsistent. As I say, since Magic Round, they have been win one, lose one, win one, lose one. There's this kind of wild inconsistency, but when they lose, I mean, it's frustrating to watch because their attack is just so weak overall. I do find it interesting that the Knights play better without Ponga in the side, and that is something that I find very interesting. They look more as a team, and they look more calm and structured. But it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, the Knights might win this one, but we just don't know. The Dolphins, though, the way they're playing, it's hard for me to see anything but a Dolphins win in this game. And now we get the Bunnies versus the Storm, and the Bunnies' recent record against the Storm is atrocious. Again, we're going to have two sides impacted by Origin, and again, we're going to see how many players do back up and how many depth players are rotated in. But I will say this, the Bunnies' record against the Storm is shockingly bad. And they're a good early start to the season. They've sort of dropped off a bit. They're still winning games here or there, but their form isn't the same as it was in the first month or so of the season, where they were playing really, really well and surprising a lot of people. They got off to a good start. The Storm, there have been some issues with the Storm. Not going to lie, they haven't been perfect. They are the pre-season favourites for both the minor premiership and the overall grand final victory. And in some of their recent performances, there have been some issues with the 80 minutes they put together. So this won't be a given for the Storm. They're going to have to work for this a little bit, but I still think the Storm are going to have too much for the Bunnies in this game. But as I say, they are coming off the bye. They haven't played for a couple of weeks. There are a huge proportion of their key players who are going to be playing Origin. Munster and Grant in the spine, for example, are playing Origin tomorrow. So if they get injured in Origin, for example, then that's going to put pressure on the depth players to step up. They've got some good depth, though, at the Storm. They have a good system at the Storm as well. But even when they're winning games, they are making very un-Storm-like errors. They're giving away silly penalties, handling errors, offsides, things that are coach killers. and they're not putting a full 80-minute performance together. There are some issues with the Storm, be it discipline or defensive lapses, just not finishing their sets correctly, not putting in a full 80-minute performance with intensity. And the Bunnies, this is a hard one to judge because that first month, 6 weeks, they were brilliant. And then they've been wildly inconsistent. And they're not... They are a bit of an enigma. So it's an interesting one coming up. It's an interesting matchup between Bennett and Bellamy. The head-to-head. These are two of the best coaches of all time. They are the super coaches, pretty much. It's an interesting one. It's a hard one to read. But it's going to be an intriguing game, especially with players backing up from Origin. Should any players get injured, this will be a fun one to watch. But the Bunnies still have a lot of injuries. They've got a lot of less experienced players in their lineup over the Storm. The Storm have got a more settled lineup, more experience. The Broncos Sharks, this is an interesting one. These are two sides that are not at their best. Even though the Broncos in their last game had a very, very good win, they're coming off the bye. The Sharks had a scrappy win over the Dragons. They weren't really at their best, but it stops a recent slide they've had. Both these sides are underperforming for the talent that they have at their disposal. Now, the Sharks do have injuries impacting them in both the forward pack and the back line. The Broncos, maybe that week off has helped them reset a few things. Michael Maguire is a coach under a lot of pressure in his first season. There was that poor run of form they were on with some really bad defeats in there, some really bad performances by individual players. They are at home. The Sharks, their recent form hasn't been great either. So this is, two sides that for me I do feel are underperforming this season. The Broncos, the same issues keep reoccurring. When things go against them, it can fall apart very, very quickly. I think they are a better side with Reece Walsh in there in attack. Defensively, you could argue, is Reece Walsh the best defensive fullback in the game? Probably not. The whole Ezra Mam situation and the talk around that and how has that impacted the Broncos negatively and positively, and it's going to be an interesting clash. The Sharks, a lot was expected of the Sharks this season to take that next step and become a solid top four side. The Broncos, again, a lot was expected of the Broncos to bounce back after a very disappointing season last season where they just really fell away quite dramatically, considering that not that long ago in a grand final. But there does seem to be issues with both sides. This could be a very fun game. If both sides can play at their best, we could have a very tight, interesting contest. But with how both sides are playing recently, even though both sides in their last games both won, there are some defensive frailties. The Sharks' discipline hasn't been great when it comes to giving away silly penalties, six agains, sin bins, silly errors in their final third of the field defensively. The Broncos, one win doesn't restart a season. I think that maybe be a sticking plaster, but it could give them confidence. They've had that week off to work on issues that they may have. So we shall see what happens. The Roosters Cowboys is an interesting one. The Roosters coming off a come from behind win in shocking conditions at the end of the game against the Knights. Not their best performance by any means, but they found a way to win after being behind. The Cowboys, I don't know where they go from here, considering that they got pumped 58 points to 4 by the Dolphins. That was a really, really poor performance by the Cowboys, in all honesty. So there's, there needs to be a response from them. That was a really they laid an egg, that one. The Roosters, though, are showing a lot of positive signs with a lot of players out through injury or origin. They are missing players again through injury and potentially through origin should players not back up. So the team they put out last weekend was a very weakened side. It's still not going to be the strongest side they can potentially put on the field because of injuries, suspensions and origin, but they are still finding ways to be competitive, fight, scrap, win games, stay in games. Whereas the Cowboys, they've hit a little bit of a wobble lately. Their form hasn't been great. They've been a bit underwhelming this season. Purdue moving into the halves, which is his favourite position. Okay, he's still a very young and experienced player. Labert hasn't played a lot of games, and he's obviously come into the centres following a knee injury. So these are two young players on the left side that are finding their feet in first grade. One's had a disrupted injury start to his career. Another one has been playing in that left centre position, has now transitioned back into the halves. They're both very talented players when playing at their best, but that is a changing combination on the left side. Taumalolo, obviously questions about his fitness, and he was a big miss last weekend with that go forwards. And of course, let's see what Tom did and how he responds being given that promotion into the Queensland starting lineup, where in game one he came off the bench. Can he, if he does back up, can he come back with that added confidence to bring some structure, I think, to the halves and the spine and the direction of the team, because that they were lacking that last weekend as well. But all across the board, the Cowboys were second best in every collision. Their end of sets, defensively, there was a lot of lack of communication, lack of confidence, and they turned into a sieve. They were playing against a team that were just on fire and were not letting up. So there needs to be a response from the Cowboys. The Roosters also do need to play better than what they did even in victory last week against the Knights. An intriguing matchup. A very intriguing matchup. Now, it'll be interesting to see which side takes advantage first about a defensive weakness, discipline, set completions. The Roosters are the worst at set completions. Their completion rate is always historically one of the lowest. That needs to improve. But it's a fun matchup because one side's coming off a scrappy win, the other side's coming off an embarrassing loss. So neither side played well last weekend to their abilities. They are both better than what last weekend suggested. Then the final match of the weekend is between the Eels and the Titans. The Eels are missing Mitch Moses, and that, I think, is a big blow to them. They play better with Moses in the side. The Titans are coming off the back of that really positive win against the Sea Eagles. And both these sides have underwhelmed this season. They're both in a similar position on the NRL ladder. Both have issues defensively, although the Eels have massively improved since Mitch Moses has come back into the side, although he is now again out injured. The Titans, I think that was a positive win for them last week. Can they actually build some momentum? Because Des Hasler's a coach under pressure. They have underperformed this season, again, for the talent that they have available. Des Hasler has been experimenting with his halves combination, his various different fullbacks. I mean, AJ Brimson is a fullback by trade, but he's actually not the first or even second choice fullback now. He's the third choice fullback now. Jaden Campbell in the halves, he's a very off-the-cuff type player. Kieran Foran in the halves, he's a very structured kind of player. Is that the right halves combination going forward? Very interesting. On the Eels side of things, Dylan Brown, there's going to be a lot of expectation on him to guide this side around without Mitch Moses. And in that first month, 5 weeks of the season, he wasn't doing that. And again, that's a difficult one. But I will say this, the Eels have massively improved and the Titans have got points in them. So this could be an exciting game between two sides at the wrong end of the NRL ladder. It could be very fun to watch. So we shall see that. I think there's points and I think there's a lot of interesting close games that we're going to have this week. And I there may be a blowout here or there. Maybe the Dolphins blow the Knights away because the way the Dolphins are playing at the moment. I mean they smash the Storm, for Christ's sake. The Dolphins, I think, are the real informed side at the moment in regards to attack. But I think we're going to have a lot of really interesting matchups that could all ultimately be very, very close. The bye round this week, Sea Eagles, they're in crisis, and there's a lot of reports coming out of the Sea Eagles about disgruntled players and Seabold being under pressure. And is the board backing him? We shall see. The Bulldogs, they get 2 points for the bye. The Raiders or the Warriors could actually go top spot on points differential, so that could be interesting. But the Bulldogs still the top dogs, no pun intended, in the NRL at the moment. And the Dragons, I think the Dragons do need a bye to have a bit of a reset. So they're the ones not playing this week. But there we go. There's the preview of round 16. A lot of intriguing matchups. A slightly longer video than previous ones, but there's a lot to talk about. We are at that point in the season now where we're now in the second half of the season. Origin 2's tomorrow, so half time in Origin is, for me, exactly the halfway point of the season. And we're now into the second half of the season where teams are chasing the top 8, teams are trying to avoid the wooden spoon, teams are trying to go for a minor premiership. And we're going to see things rack up over the next couple of months as we go into finals. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.